The first relay is 3 athletes, and it splits into a men's class and a women's class. And the first leg runners, they have a specific job to do, which is not to lose the relay really, so they need to come back with the pack of runners. Everybody starts together. Second leg job is to go out and have a solid run and bring the team back with a chance, and then the last leg's runner is obviously to get over the finish line in as good a position as they can make. So it's again, there's often a lot of chopping and changing in the order, and it's one of the more exciting disciplines to watch, I think.
Fáiltear maha go scíidir agus go éireach scastalt crulle gyjaraf rutas cwtr mich Darnaway. Fasgir balle farash far a rosinir in yri jachganir son reis belooi gewaun de sprint inu hashinik really ille ach harishir aster gemat nesatje maar va Liz Campbell mine gegezen a skip de richting de feed en mooi is a galle maar hane skip in ille hishu er wachpad sat giroch tosche hoog er reis jachke ha reis ne morgen nog er wian maar ha en nu Fasgir agus va bon or ille de skip net tanna wachkischen fermer honne sinje in yri jachgen kan 100 keller wie toch loos na leichen galaf ach ha nicht ne berichten ich moeide goos maar ha holtinjele agus ha mihin agus Lorna Eads konder riesje show agus met odrin rastri Lorna minne reisje van Lorna. We're seeing the GPS trace just now of the men who've all headed out onto the course in the Darnaway forest here. The Brits seem to be taking a slightly different route there. We've had the women's race already today, and I think a creditable 8th place from the women.
Yes, no, 8th place is very good result. They had a problem on the first leg; they were a little bit down, but the second and third leg runners have pulled up a lot of time. Kat Taylor pulling up 10 places, and Jessica another 2 places. Similar
to what Kat Taylor managed in the sprint relay on Saturday, and again she had a very good run in the middle distance race yesterday as well.
Yeah.
Nice to have somebody on form like that.
Yeah, no, she's flying at the moment.
For those who were watching over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday we were in Nairn and then in Forres. We were in the centre of town. Things were quite built up and very manicured. This is quite the opposite. This is almost what you might consider as more pure orienteering.
Yeah, no, this is proper forest orienteering, traditional orienteering in forest.
And how do the challenges differ? What makes this, well, it's different because it's in the forest, but does it make it harder? Is it a more difficult discipline?
I think the difficulties are still there. It's just instead of using streets as your running line, you're having to pick a good running line through the forest.
We're seeing the men here heading to the controls. How easy is it to find your way from the two? Do you, in the towns, it seemed as if maybe you could follow walls, you could follow buildings, you could follow pavements. It maybe wasn't the fastest route. But here, how much are you relying on what you can see with your eyes in front of you, and how much are you relying on your skills at map reading and interpreting what's on that bit of paper in your hand?
Yeah, it's probably 50-50. You have to be able to interpret from the ground to the map, and back again from map to ground to build up the picture of what you're seeing in front of you and how that relates to what you're seeing on the map in front of you.
And we'll just mention that the time we've got in front of us, very small gaps here at the moment, seconds between them, but these are long races, so we're talking 30 minutes for each leg, so the time gaps will be bigger by the end, probably.
Probably, although it can still come down to a head-to-head race down the last run-in funnel.
I mean, in the women's race, we saw the Danes were a good 4 minutes ahead, I think, but then the gaps between the Norwegians and the Swedes and the Russians after that were much, much closer.
Yes, the Danish girl, particularly first leg, just ran away from them all.
My Al has been in form all week, and she was again.
Flying.
Thanks, Lorna. Vishid Suler na ha tachart at Bial Nation, ha nu have skipping met a hishu, Jake van Ulikelier. The Toshuk, Vakar, the shit, the clear Jiggerich core beyond Hish Namashin ha to live half Harish go pink a co-kishin. Ach, Maris Hish and Ocean and out at the Irripple Peacock an nói sculige machas sin na roinin na jifa roinin hachke be kuchach gur súrig tú kuche súrig dóile agus fémiat notion slí achke héna warach skunne viliantin cacha chéle bí gach Jaranje be gach koer de willat me viet me master har is er fat agus mar sin chavi dinge seachtinile féin bo mar gas na jifa roinin ha nach a kwad gema Paintjes der we hiks van hachkesen en ik wil aan nu wat fijn hachkesen get wat ik in de schienvlie. Gaan je zo ver in de vaatbesich? Zo verder ha tot macher roos in de kindje op de koperhoek. Hij is terug torst is aan bergen maar game is het gooset. Schau goed doen, is goed doen. Ze ha een gelietje michelere. De kruven, de pressen, de ranig, ulig als water. Hij is veel meer schlier waar ik tronnischen. Nu raar u heen. Gaan je zo een slie is asse. Gaan we toch liamtin pikken te starren je keem zo. Gefijn me schachter hoe ik alle houden. Agus gefijn me melia aan. Dus looitje. Ik heb nog piega pulloche gierig. Oeps. Had een haar steden hou ik. Ik zag toch als skialisch. Het zit goed aard te gaan ranjoch. Waar ravig. Voor de luchtklobachie. Ik heb me gehoord in je. Ik kwam daar heen naar St. Karstein. Is Jane fatfish, agus kajara smashiacha. Klonje te voeren, mijn kassen is een kujak. Ha torisch gegeven, na kuzen is wie vlochach. Voor de villatischen, een loodjen ha, na de gronddag chirm kroei. Shekish, mijn kitsch die gesleven ze ha, vonischen. Riest, gassen van af, agus verder gaan maar geen karakter heeft komen. Een aardrisch. Ik zou het al tronnegelje. Gaan maar zo wie zou a roontje in de koers had ik in de sarsin, kijk eens net zo skilch. Kijk hier het zijn viechen wie tug slie a hachke. Lorna, we're seeing here an exemplar runner taking us through the forest. It's not all entirely in the forest. Some of it is more open like this, some of it is denser, and some of it is more open country.
Yes, so today we have a mixture of the mature beech forest, which you can see Rafa running through just now. So very fast, good visibility. But then they'll come into areas where the trees are much closer together and they have younger growth and the leaf cover is much more in your face, so you can't really see very far.
And we saw there, Rafa, who's running the course as an example for us there was a lot of gates. He was passing through controls quite closely, but there are big gaps between some controls where you just have to find the best route along quite a long distance.
Yeah, particularly after probably about 2/3 way through, they have a longer leg where it'll be interesting to see whether they take a very straight line or whether they peel off left or right to take a slightly more round route.
And straight, despite the Roman example, isn't necessarily always the best way to go. Sometimes you just have to pay attention to the pond that's between you and the town.
Straight is not always great.
For example, here we're seeing the Russians heading out. It's not a straight line. I'm not quite sure to what they're heading.
But they're running along just along the base of the slope.
So they're following the contours there, which all mark points of equal height, so that they're not running uphill, they're not running downhill and having to get up again, but they're just keeping on an even keel, as it were.
He's just gone to the wrong one. So he was pulled completely offline down to the bottom slope. He was actually supposed to be going up onto the hill.
I suppose that must happen quite naturally sometimes. You kind of follow the ground.
Yeah, no, you can get pulled down offline if you're not keeping a close eye on your compass or where you are on the course. Just the natural line pulls you off.
All part of the challenge, I suppose.
It is indeed.
Thanks, Lorna. As slow more het krinjige. Ik creëer een vaartpisje zo. Gaan je maar je gewil vaartpisje in de krinjige aan de rest. Dan ga ik ook vaartpisje schia waaien naar halappen het al. Agus vaartpisje niet meer te gaartpisje. Voor vijfrichtings net zoals verlader. Heen, je weet hem toe. Es gaat er een gelje se heen in je. Wat ik ook een reisje se gelje in je. Als er reisje nachgezet. Agus moran efo reisig, moran nach reisig, cwtioch yr un condag ag Darnaway, fa sy'n rinir I chachgyn an yn ynnion narain, an y farash, as niwg Darnaway with tydd farash, agus y norsyn y falaf go canig, ysgo glawn Afrig, nes asgog tirig nes chachgyn. De prichten ich maar, bekken de viarnas, gelijk se minach, y nŵn ha, de hoor gelijk yn Europol, hiw, as an inisht agus becant a bhearnach agus in dar a team agus na Rúisinaí. Am da bhrín as gatarí chéh a cáir a bhí rí de skip a bhríchtin inniu an a réis na man na streiche ach trí taring mach gemíor snach. Holly Orr joins me now. Holly, thanks very much for taking the time to speak to us on BBC Alba. You were meant to be running earlier on today in the women's relay, but unfortunately you had to withdraw from the race. Why?
Yeah, that's correct. I think at the sprint relay I had a small fall.
Yeah, we spoke to you and said, and you'd had a disappointing leg, but you'd taken a tumble and then made a mistake, but you never really established how serious a tumble it was.
Yeah, I don't think you really know that when you do. There's so much adrenaline, you fall and you just get back up and keep running. So it wasn't really until the end that I sort of established how bad it was, and I've had lots of physio support. But this is a hard game. These forests are tough. You have to lift your legs very high, and you have to pay attention both where you put your feet and at the map. And if you have problems with one, then the other suffers, and it's a losing game from the start.
So yesterday's middle distance race didn't really go as you'd planned. I think you'd hoped to be a lot closer to the top end of things than you were.
Oh yes, I was hoping for the sharp end, but it didn't go to plan, and then I sort of had thoughts of what to do, and I thought this is a home world championship. There's a lot of people here that have given me a lot of love and support, and to give them it back, I wanted to run down the run-in, and that's why I just went for home.
Well, I'm sorry you couldn't take part today, but in your absence, almost unfortunate, the team did quite well, really. Will they be pleased with an 8th place finish?
I think so. I mean, in 2013 they were 8th. Last year they were a bit better, and I think we were hoping for something a bit more, but I think the girls will be pleased with the start that happened and how they came through the field. We're showing that we're improving year on year, and I think that's the main thing.
And what about this course? How tough is the terrain out there?
It's tough because it's so fast. You know, you see these guys, they're not even stopping. They're going straight through. A lot of them, you see, they won't look at the map. They'll have sussed that out before they've got there. You know, there's no let up, no breathing space. Of course, you don't know who's running the same leg as you in terms of, and there's Scott Fraser going through
just a minute down, but as you say, you don't know whether you're on a short leg or a long leg compared to the leaders.
No, exactly, and that's what's hard. You have to pay full attention to what you're doing, and also be aware of what others are doing, and not get dragged off by people, and also not follow them and do your own thing.
I'll let you go, Holly, but as a tip, how well do you think the British team will do today, and who do you think will be amongst the medals?
I think the British team have a really good chance. There's 3 really solid runners, and they're fast and they're technically very proficient, and this is a good place to be at this stage. She's ahead of Sweden, as you can see, so that's always a good sign. I think the Swiss boys have a good team. The Swedes will be perhaps out to a bit of emulate last year. There's some big names in there, and it's first legs, it's still all to play for.
Holly, thank you very much. Keith Mila, thank you, Holly Origin. Ik weet het, Tarigamacha, Region Madness Streiche, in u, as a Hunish, Ryan Clearward, Catherine Taylor, I guess, Jess Tully, Frukamach, Fashker, Jockey Jara van de, as a skiervaartje nog, I guess, Strasbeer, went, ik genoeg hier de Nofgevaartje een. I guess, Hiesjen Maha, Schlie had Ulle, ik goal, een 9 point, I guess, Hiesjen Kama Ray. Ik kan hier is het. Maar kan de viarne fiscal is een voeien als je. Stok al iets in een schlie miskirke te maar een condition. Lorna iets er als konder. Lorna, there's the hint there of a group clumping together who may be on a shorter leg. Who knows? But it is early days, and it does take a little while for everything to start becoming clear in terms of who is actually doing well.
Yes, the course today is got a particularly unusual forking going on, with quite a bit of difference between some of the different gaffles. They're going through that passage twice, so only after the second time they've been through that gaffled section, you'll start to see them coming together, and the race might come back together again.
So they're essentially, there's a big sort of almost through that valley that we can see almost on the wooded area at the top of the map there. they're almost sort of zigzagging across
Yeah,
that
they're
in opposite
crossing,
directions,
yeah.
depending on which option they're on. So they'll be running against each other at some point, and then all coming together again at the end, and then they know where they are almost.
Yeah, I mean, you usually do in the relay get a little bit of crossing around. This is particularly complicated system that they've got in this for today.
It looks nice and simple on this map, but the maps in front of us, it looks far more complicated, far more controls.
You'll certainly be playing a few mind games with the athletes when they're running. Because when you're running through that type of section, while you're concentrating on your own run, you're looking out on your peripheral for what the other athletes are doing.
Estonia, Igaramalch, Noster, Rank, Ulig, Mui, Ishin, Emisk, Juffer, Vuinen, Afiachen, Wifain, Emachas, as a match. Shonish Kalien is Duil, Kalit the Horshahorik, Kali Huish. I guess Taluk materiality, Tor Ranjach, Tor Kruven, is Gegen, Irware, Huris Kart, Natu, Primrupi, Fechloch. I guess I think the Leam, Tashin, in a Kruven, a Hush Kujok. And Yakela, Hoferis Shinkata, Hamanavas Nachalita Hoferis, Saha, Nishap Leraki, Gayan again. She Kully Mood Gariru a shop, as in Jesset Ballet Farash. On the ski Straspe, Hashker, Trick more Darnaway, Farvel, Jordan Murav Vrock. Sander and Hallavachkesen, Hanarpish, the new Gary. So as she is the sleeve. Lorna, that's a good example maybe of sort of choosing a difficult line straight uphill and tripping over land when you could fall around the side of a hill looking for the control gate, but sometimes you do choose a straight line and sometimes you choose an easier line round the edge and avoid the rough stuff.
Yeah, it's...
Natuurlijk Tronne Geechtersen. Tronne Fijn Karkesen. Fit as Rijnkesen. Van zo Kupa. Hier ten Harry Gijssen en nu. Wintje Nepelek. En Lager Kujok. Lukt in je haas, maar vasker gele. Fabian Hartner als een Jelevische regiert. Kan het 3 uur in de pjare Janev. Lukt in je maar vasker gele getap. Kan het 3 poeinen. Ik krinje gemoeide goos. Maar hij is volle schach aan Krikchatsa en nu het $1. Begin er hier in het kaag. Je hebt dat gezien. Ricardo Scale. Hij regeert goed scheidsrechter. Hij geschiet Scott Fraser. Voor club interlopers aan de nation. Hij is voltien liamte hier in de roosje schieten. En zo aan je gaast er hier. Hij is manche net dan waar kutjoksen. Stoch een einde tussen knier hoschach in de race. Dan was een koning misschien skip in de schare. Ik zie dat wie Magariru. En het 3 boeien maar van elkaar het in konig. Lokal regel sava gerish. Dus ik ga nog dat ik na goosje. Ik na geen de goosje. Ik is nog averk ook. Ik is fijn zo ook. Ik alleen ik kreeg een gejo. Het bij al toch more Darnaway. Kwam er de screen voor houden huis. Fijn de piare we kwam er race. Ik kan gewoon heen. Gaan je camera zo holle hatch met de hikkesju. Shomaha. Hier het zal ik in ik. Dres point. Hier jaren. Ik spek de viarnischen. Zal we niet jaren mal huis. Gaan Jelevish. Had niet de vaas kan noorsen. Bjarnelands. Latvia Zoltenischen. Boeien je verkleven het snoorse vegenelijke winnaar. Maybe 2 or 3 packs there. There's 16 seconds and less, and then there's another group of 30 seconds long, and then some more at a minute. Could that be forking, or is that just pace?
I think that could be the forking, because there is a little bit of difference between the 3 different variations. on that first loop. So when they come back around the second time, it will be interesting to see whether that evens out. It's really good for a team if you've got get rid of the longer one on your first leg.
Would teams often put one of their stronger runners in the first leg as well, or is it? I suppose it depends tactically on.
It depends tactically. We certainly experimented a few years ago in the women's team with putting our two fastest leg runners on actually the first two legs, so that the weaker one was pulled through if they were together. So there's all different tactics that can be taken.
But if you do have your strongest runner on a nice long leg, it's a double benefit as long as they do well. That might be too.
Yeah, because you saw Maya just made the jump off the front from first leg, and then they just held on to it.
Yeah, in the women's race earlier, Denmark were ahead from the start, and nobody else really managed to make up the time and then throughout the legs. See an example, I think Ireland doing quite well. Nicholas Simonin running their first leg, and he's probably their strongest runner. I think he's.
Yes, he is.
They reckon he's maybe the best in Ireland. So for them, if they are running a long leg, that would be of benefit. But given their time, maybe they're not. They're quite high up there.
I would say let's see after they've been through this next pass through the forking section.
So is this an example of where they are being taken different routes? The Danes going one way and the French going the other, so they're crossing each other's path. Short the chin, tronne in Kingele. Farvel a ferrest eichking. Farvel a ferrest Leershin ein te am goor størst agus Denachel. Agus skippen it belek. Etchin train. Holtanjele brikke shore mer hiisje shit mer haat. Bekken achriger hier gezit. Danjele wis haast der hoshach Belarus noster agus ne beleki. Der liente Orison. Agus Nagu Hitchin, I can't do it. Holding you Urtaguni on the Garam Kjal, I guess Jeraction, Czech Gochavan. About Chin Trone Loin in the Ocean, Jan Prochaska, Hiet Jaren Gassen. I guess for Bulgaria as in Yay. I guess in that Vuyen, the Skippy in the Chin Trash at the East. Jeremava. When you Latvia go the hall, back in the Yats in the Miskin again, and who is a Stokel.
Scott's just come through.
Well spotted. I'm struggling with the number of red, white and blue team uniforms that are out there. It kind of gets a bit tricky, but Scott Fraser tot range Latvia and Ishtacha. Hanesho a reach Medirik, a reach Medirik Visakin yet BBC Alba. Hane Puloch a reach Medirik Visaunor. The has the reach at the Guyana of Muik Canich. Ik in de zaken nog heb je hunje aan de Glan Afrika. Ik is verder wie ze rij aan de schön. Verder een magere is reis wie nog in je kan het berichten niet. Hakuri wie torst een harselijke nikke biohorte als ze reis atte. Ik is verder wie kamers in de pijn bij nog eens. Vriendering Ronarpisch. Ik is zo Hector Hens.
Forest athlete, so I do mostly forest orienteering. I guess I specialise generally in the longer races, more endurance races, and particularly I like a lot of hills and tougher running. I've come from a background of hill running and mountain running as a kid. I was brought up with that. My dad has actually competed in 2 world championships back in the 70s with orienteering. So he started orienteering at school, got into it, was good at it, went to the world champs in the 70s, and actually he competed in 1976 when the world championships was also here in Scotland and in Darnaway as well. In fact, they had the long race and he ran the classic long race in Darnaway. Where we're going to be running the relay, so it's all a bit of history and yeah, quite exciting, I guess. I've been training really hard to compete as well as I can in these championships, and hopefully, I'm one of the best prepared athletes in the world at this time for these championships, because I've been living and training here for the last 7.5 years really. My dream has been a medal for this World Championships, and I've had that for like 5 years now to win a medal in this home World Championships. So I guess that's the dream, and the goal is probably pretty well aligned with that. With the 12th last year, I think it's realistic to be aiming that high. So that's what I'm aiming for.
Hector Haynes, vision yn ochus gynnyd gymalish as y reish ate. Hector Janu Magariru as y reish fianach yn un yr y fai. Gysas as y reish fianach lish hyn. Criach na gys yn deiche fach coiwman. Agos sydd mae'r fai gyda yn hamas y fica yr y cholanigach. Chorwgach na hasling yn y liantyn yn isht. Belarus yr gol yr hosiach maha. Hosiach yn Yelevish, nosted agos y fele. Gyfwy'n asyn yr fi con ag yn ir fa fohws. Fo hosiach yr eich nyr hosiach cwysyn y ffysglyg y mach asyn. Andrei Salin ga Belarus. Fabian Hertner ga Yelevish Gernot Kirschbaumer. Dyg Austria agos gan y felig. Chwan am warach yn ras nach cwydw. Jannik Michael za hawn, feres loich is toch as skipping achgesen. Sna Czech ich notion Lievenach Yirig. Lorna, just having a look, we talked a little while ago about the clumping that was coming about, and it still seems to be happening there. There's 4 teams that are a good 30 seconds ahead of everybody else. So it does look as if their leg is maybe a little bit shorter.
That's a possibility that they've got a shorter a variation over the whole of this course. So Scott coming through.
You've been keeping an eye on his times as well.
Yeah, so after the first split he was in 20th, but he pulled up to 9th on the second one, and
now 10th, but only a second behind the Irish, so there's not much between 9th and 10th. So do you think that means he was maybe running a slightly longer leg between controls earlier?
Yeah, I think because we didn't see that from any of the GPS that he had made a mistake particularly. I think it's just that he had a longer gaffle or forking, we sometimes call them, on that leg. So hopefully that means that the British team have the shorter ones towards the end.
We'll keep an eye. 29 minutes, so we're expecting maybe the first leg to be over in 34, 35, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So did you just say to her that although they've maybe got a longer or shorter on this one, by the end of the 3 legs, it should all have evened out?
Thanks, Lorna. Nielevish, I guess Belarus maha. Rich Harish Rawat, I guess it all Rash Richt Shach Ganachalje. Jonas Leanderson. Gan Nielevish, Ganduain, Kamalishkal. Chin Tron Dialavision, I guess von Ukraine. Ferachkes and Ferasi Kujok. Duain Becken Rierig and Ras, that Hishin Marigahargishin. Tasharakal Cherry, Miskin Bone, Gomor, as Lichen, Echashahat Konderum, Inisht. I'm delighted to say that Denmark's Maya Alm now joins us as she enjoys watching one of her colleagues on screen. Maya, you've had a fantastic championship so far and another gold medal this afternoon.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I have dreamt of being a world champion sometime, and this year just succeeded 3 times. It's amazing, and I don't think I have realized it yet.
So three gold medals so far. Had you expected that? Did you feel like you were in that form coming into the championships?
I knew I was in a good shape, and I knew I was good on the sprint. And then today it was just perfect for me because it was like running in a Danish forest. So my goal was 3 medals, and of course I was trying to get 3 golds, but I have never dreamt of that it would come true.
Did you expect the Scottish forest to be as similar as it is to Danish forest? Denmark is very flat, but this part of Scotland is not very hilly.
Yeah, I could see from the map, the old map, that it could look like Danish orienteering, but yesterday in the middle distance it was not that similar to Denmark. It was more bushy and a little bit steeper, so I thought it would be like that today as well. So it was so nice to run out there, just like, oh, I know how to do this and I can use my speed, and it's just, yeah, it was incredible. And then with the two other girls finishing, it was it was so nice.
Yeah, the middle yesterday was a little bit more difficult for you, but is that your championships over? Can you relax now?
Yeah, now I can relax. I have been very tired, and this morning I was just I was not sure if I could be able to set myself up for running today, but then when I came out and saw the other runners, and then I was ready. So it was very nice. And
just looking at the men's race, the Danes are doing okay, but it's early days yet. How well do you think your Danish team can do in the men's race?
They need to do well to be in the top positions. We have a youngster running on the first leg, so we will see. I can see that he has lost a little bit of time, but but the two others, they are very good. So I think they can still do well. Their goal is to be on the podium, so I hope so.
Maja, thank you very much. Keith Mila, thank you for joining us. Maja Almashin for skipping the Darnaway, who are Bonor and you. Ishe who are Kujok Bonor, Bonus happen on the Farish Agus Kujok. Just Sahorn as a skipping is a really good Chishin Achgessen. I guess a Shoshin Maha, the Kiri here, Hoshe, Genefit, here, Horse Genefit, Chimical the Hoshe. 3 minutes and Gia Karichet, that's in fair in Nierwijk for Mahorgavi. Should the point me, Trenimat at all, I guess Belarus. A Hoshok, Ikinirisa, Andre Salin, Geisen, Fabian Hertner, Gerinjelevish. I guess that's skipping a shit that would be fair Kuyuman. The Dolishach, the whole came of as a rage. I guess Shinat, Mach begin at Falav, Mahbu Emach, I guess, a Narnet Vet, Benjelevish, Daniel Hugman, and Mach the Hoosianish, I guess, Anna Maicus in Gahin. And more into the Arnold Oak Chicken, number shit of Alnut in that skipping a shin. Maar een fusion, dat ook chicken is gaan nagaan. Oh, veel noster. Kermit Kirschbaumer. Chinishach. Ik is een Machlo. Jevinac, Erierig. Ik is zo, Mointje Nipelek. Scott Fraser. Chin Schach. Het Pialu. Het heeft mooi zo kujok. Ik is Nipelek. FHU. Vergen Jigen is Lootje. Jannik Michels hebben ze hier het jaar en 8 gezien. Ze verfrikken Jal. Graskin hier wegpikken. Dat is het ook al mag. Narne mag. Thomas Hendricks. Dat is een Gerwaard. Minatje die reger. Belarus. Wat dan is Knik. Scott Fraser haar is er alleen. Galappen, Bulgaria. Goed, Gema Art. Toch in de art uit naar Victor. Het is een Tsjechië geweldig Janssen Divi. Afvalaf Geisen in de Narne game. Scott Fraser, Jushal Maha.
Yeah,
he'll be happy with that, I think.
Nod there, yeah, job done.
Because he was a disappointed man when he finished the sprint on Saturday when we spoke to him. He thought he'd run well, didn't quite turn out that way, but this is better. You have a much better idea of how you've gone, I suppose, when you come across the line here.
Yeah, no, I think that nod from him.
Nice to see him happy.
Come back in a group, not too far down on the first group.
And there is just a huge big clump of teams there on just a minute 10, minute 20. Yeah. So there's not a lot in between all of them.
And we've seen that the gaffle forkings they're quite different. So as I say, hopefully we have the longer one ticked off.
Sjoshin Tokal, Daniel Hugman, Hamach in Darne, Keen, de Reis, de Tannewerk. Dat wees niet heel veel schouwelischkal. Holt in de Jarax, holt in de Kjal. Jarak is gorm, kan me goed kjara. Hugman er wille farpisch vageriru. Gesho. Haratuurwisch, goeie woord, achura. Bonor nie, as a Reis Vienach. I guess, well, Sweden
are still waiting.
Yeah, that's kind of unusual. Ollie Bostrom waiting now and only just getting the map from Jonas Leandersson. He had a good day in the sprint the other day. He doesn't look to have had such a good day in today's really.
No, it looks like he wasn't happy with his performance there.
Now that wasn't just the look of a man who was tired, that was somebody cursing something.
we can all follow that, even though it was in Swedish.
Probably best it was in Swedish. We'll not ask getting too many questions, but this is quite a cunning design feature as well. Not only do you have the map, but you can't see anything. As you head out onto the course, all you can see is trees. You don't really know what lies ahead of you, do you?
No, you come up over that bank, over the fence, and bang. Watching the replay.
Will there likely be the Swiss and the Belarusians quite well ahead there? Will there likely be sort of a longer leg for them here, because they are really quite far ahead of a lot of the teams at that point?
Yeah, no, it would be interesting when they come round, whether if they've got a longer one on this one, we might see this chasing pack catching them up again.
Interesting.
So this is live on the GPS now. You can see already they're forming two different groups to come through the second, third.
I think there's a couple of little glitches in it. I don't think the Swiss are quite that far ahead of absolutely everybody.
Yeah, no, I think we've lost the Belarus GPS. He seemed to be further off to the north.
So sin mar bhasin maha, the hiad aharachug, in Yelevish Hoshach, Belarus as in Yei, I guess, Polotinele Ifiachan Biprehore. Yelevish has der Hoshach. Had er becket de Viarnas gul maha Belarus Stokeliats in the goal. Tevele in a hoos Kujok, Stoch, Gavelle, Belarus and Ocher Howl. He's I can't tell if I can hear it, as you found Trish Fa. There's an Nagin Nochkig. Ach, a mythology will a Nagin Nochkig. Akem zeg, or two like a rich pull skippelte. Ach, Scott Fraser at in fair, Farahoshe, I guess in Cornerum and Drast. Scott, thanks very much for joining us. You've still got everything attached to your fingers and thumbs. Compass and Dibber still here. You're fresh off the course. How did that go?
Well, that was quite a tough course. There was a lot of gaffling out there, so it was very, very difficult to see where you are in the forest compared to the others. There's runners running in all directions looking for different controls, but I thought it went well, and I believe I had a bit of a longer gaffle to start with, so hopefully the second or third leg has a shorter one and comes through the field.
That's certainly what Lorna seemed to think. Looking at the splits, you'd look to be way down at one point, and then suddenly you would back up as if you'd got past maybe the longer part of the course. How difficult is it then with runners crisscrossing you? It's easy enough to say no, just run your own race, look at your own map, but it must be confusing.
It's extremely difficult, especially in this forest where it's quite bushy and green, and you can only see a few meters ahead of you in some parts. So you're running full out in nice forest like you can see on TV now. But then you're going into the bushes, and then your direction is, you've got to look at your compass.
And how confident do you think you can be? Should be up into fifth place at this point? Is this kind of where you'd hope to be at this stage?
Well, we're going for a medal. As I say, hopefully the long gaffle I had in the beginning, the last leg run I'll have that short gaffle and pull through to a top 3 position.
Was the course tougher or easier than you expected?
It was tougher, a lot tougher actually, in terms of all the bushes out there. Some nettles as well, so it was quite tough.
Well, you seem a lot happier with things than you were the last time I spoke to you on Sunday. So let's hope it stays that way. And thanks very much for coming straight on to speak to us here in BBC Alba. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thank you. Bye.
Scott Fraser maha ava fair erin for hoos maar hoort me. I guess het breedte jakel aan de siege ma is jy hier jaren ikkesen je. I guess ook Graham Gristwood. Is er wel hoe is going to gooi gewatch. And I guess Cushion et al. Lorna Graham has managed to pull up 5th place at the last check. We'll take us, might not quite get the next one quite yet, but certainly gaining ground and things looking pretty good for the British men at the moment.
Yeah, no, just coming through the field nicely. I believe Gigi's wish is to beat the Austrian.
Particularly the Austrian?
Even if it goes horribly long, as long as he's beaten the Austrian. For some reason.
Well, Graham Gristwood versus Helmut Gremmel, a personal battle. He should marry Marigoperges shin emach maha. Should ne here on nicht. Nicholas Simon in the here Garant gen hoos Geisen. I guess Connor Short in that game Achkesen. Ik can hier is it. I guess be it nog is condoring I've Janu Cleva. Gron here in the grief. Fashkun the pain. Brichting je revi. De misk in bal maar Graham Gristwood a heen het bal naar een als een aardbisje shin aan de taviele se hoog Siad chit a bharnich Hong Kong agus é sé rutig in chaáil stocha a noch is nach beat a mwy fatte. I should say, Lord, there was the women's race earlier. It's still over the same course, and some people take slightly longer than others.
Yes,
like the Hong Kong
I think
athlete.
the Hong Kong athlete was still.
And if it's confusing for someone like Scott, who people crisscrossing, as we see the Swede crisscrossing the entire course there, it must be doubly confusing for a woman athlete still out there being overrun by these elite men.
She looked like she was quite happily just going around doing her own thing and enjoying being here at the World Championships.
There must be a satisfaction to just solving it.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's just get round at whatever level you're competing at.
Shoshin Maha, Shot Maravat, a geheerd pink in the Darnaway Yaran, Britain is a Ho Gavat, Scott Fraser, Graham Griswoodagel on the Seal Gleva. Luain has got a rashes and Yakvach Giak, 3 minutes in a Yirik. Yiri Kujok, Davin Yirik. En je zit progetan in de Suanich, jak je prisje tool. Je weet ze zin, ja, de Suanich. De figure weer nog eens, je nu morgen op jaar. Na zin, gaan in. She had to go er boven naar Nuri, agus Gish. Zijn skipping, Jonas Leanderson. Rie hier het geen. Gustav Bergman Kujok is race een oorsen. Australia verder tot South Africa, ik heb dus al verder tot Shakhtar, agus Portugal Kujok. Het zijn Kujok hier. Jarin Achkesen. Generees. Agus sin kwantar. Tavoye. Het sin vi hele mooi in de koersen sin. Nuain. Agus Spanje, agus netana verkich. Het sin kwantar ulig. Sin kaghaul. It's a GPS.
Just lost the signal a bit there.
That's one of the frustrations. She's trying to make head or tail of it and then they'll disappear.
Yeah, it's just like, is Gigi's spot underneath all that mass as they're together?
How much will the coaches on either side for any of the teams be paying attention? Are they allowed to see the GPS trace during the race, or are they kept away from things like that?
So the athletes that have not run yet are held in quarantine. They won't know anything about it, and there's no feedback to them. So
the coaches are around, but they're not allowed to speak to them, they're not allowed to get anywhere near them.
Yeah, they will have a coach with them in quarantine, but there's no communication back to the race. So the idea is they don't get any feedback. They're coming in completely cold to the situation.
And unlike what we saw in Forest and Nairn, where athletes weren't allowed to run the courses before, they were allowed to visit. They could visit their auntie for a cup of tea if they wanted and take a wander around.
Yeah.
It's different here out in the forest, and again in Glenafric for Friday. The rules on them being here are more strict, aren't they?
They're much strict. The whole area will have been embargoed for several years from when they know where the competition's being held, and it really is no athlete or people connected to athletes are allowed into that area.
How enforceable is that?
It has to be taken on a certain merit of trust.
And it will be adhered to. It just has to be. It's the spirit of the sport.
Yeah, it's the spirit of the sport here.
You can't travel everywhere.
No, I think you're allowed to drive through an area, staying on the public roads, but you can't get out the car and walk into the area. So there will be a little bit of driving around on the road that runs through the area.
Cully Dúil an the Yaran and yet a shot at Darnaway. Kuch in the Pinkin, Kamatter of Valara, Kuch or Calf, this Ragakeva, the Yinji gave, Bekan Mu, Catch Villa, as a Yarkel for a Villa Street. A Hanilan Huavas, Femi at the V, Rehicke, I guess Kamal Sul Yermacher, Catch Villa. It called the Crave, it called the Press, it called the Balde, She, Balde Hurricane, Achnagard, the Hoosh for a Will, Putten Tuchjum. She took a little stock, a tochtigen. Sy met een Ilvarak, hij verder gaan maar goal spoors. Ze stay als ze Gillian raast. Hij is 5 uur kutjegen. Hine mag ze zijn klonje doen. Met zich doen. Krankalligrie. Maar gaan niet eens aan te. Paravetje in magas. Zeg ze. Vet nu helemaal Daniel Hoopman. Haast er horsjoch. Shegli. Ries Vianach. En je. Hij is haast. Aan de sound in nieuw gaan het doen. Kollen ze, ik en hier is het. gyfela gyma yr ygoi. Haferil de bw chlesig yn ddreichting i'r unig ddau condraim sy yn ras Murray Strain a Donation. Murray, thanks very much for joining us. You've metaphorically got your feet up today.
Yes, definitely.
Watching as an interested spectator. Daniel Hubman, I think goal winner yesterday in the middle, is clearly still in form today. He looks to have opened up another wee bit of a gap, and the Forest is suiting him. He likes it, I think.
Yes, I think he's come to terms. I read before the championships he's spent 40 days training in Scotland before this year's championships, so he's come over I think 6 or 7 times in the last year to have training camps up here in the Highlands and really get to grips with the forests around here.
And what difference does that make? I mean, I'll make a confession. I'm an islander from an island with very few, if any, trees, and to some extent a forest is a forest is a forest, but that's not true when you're running through it, I suppose.
No, I mean, there's a lot of the shape of the land underneath the forest is the main thing. It's the hills and the bumps and the hollows that they're finding their way through today. It can be quite specific to Scotland, and then as well the vegetation on top of it. You know, a lot of teams have been commenting they found it very heavy going in Scotland. I think the Swedish team have all got sort of lower back problems from having to lift their knees up and get over our heathery tussocks.
Well, I think where there's not just a genuine bog, there's probably about 3 foot of moss after all the rain we've had this summer.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and I think the forest here in Darnaway today is a bit faster and a bit nicer, I think, even than what we had yesterday for the middle distance. Oh, Scott Fraser there coming through. He's clearly enjoying it.
Oh, great Griswood on this one after Scott's good start, but also Lucas Basset, another of the form runners from these championships, has pushed France up into second place. So we're seeing maybe a combination of local knowledge and pure form coming through. What's your view on the complexity of today's course? It looks like an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I think I've heard you talking a lot about the forkings already, and I think that's been a really interesting way they've done it. I think that's this sort of 6-way forking that you go through twice for each runner. That's the first time I've seen that used in a big championship like this. So, and it just seems to be doing its job of really splitting the field out, because usually in the World Champs relay you find it's like packs form and then they come back together, and it doesn't actually split things up too much, but it really has today.
You're an actuary, you're a numbers man, so you could probably appreciate quite a complex equation might have been drawn up to deciding who takes what course what and what route when.
Yes, I definitely think so. And I know the planner today, Graham Ackland, he's a physics professor at Edinburgh University, and he's a real brainy type. So he'll have been having fun playing with this, I think.
So when we look at this now, live tracking from out in the course, you see the Swedes, perhaps surprisingly quite far down at the end of the first leg, are still quite far down, but Switzerland seem to definitely have opened up more of a gap. I mean, could they just be fortunate? Could they be on 2 of their shorter legs in the first 2?
Possible. I think the Swiss did have the shorter ones on the first one. That we saw them. They got that 1-minute lead on Scott, and then they held that on the second passage through, which suggests they had the shorter one first time. We did see you're saying the Swedes are a bit further back there. We did see them make a mistake at the start of this leg, where it looked a lot as if maybe they'd been running with another runner going to the wrong forking control, and then they had to realise, go back and correct themselves. Yeah,
they almost seemed to be heading to one control and then thought, no, this isn't the one I should be at. I should be going back to that one.
Yeah, and you can find that when it splits like that, because you don't know if you're running with another team, you don't know if you're going to the same checkpoint or not, and you find they stop at a checkpoint, it's the right one for them, it's the wrong one for you, and that's, panic, oh, I'm in the wrong place.
Which then compounds any errors or any problems there might have been in the first leg.
Exactly, yeah. So I think we saw, it looked like what the Swedes did on this leg was very similar to the Russians on the previous leg, and they lost about a minute doing that mistake. So that's probably a minute that the Swedes are going to have to try and chase back.
Is experience important then in a race like this, when it is so complex, when there is so much going on in terms of route choices and forking?
Definitely, it can be. Just to have that confidence to run at the fast speed. The quality of this race is way much higher than any other race you'll get, because you don't get these big national, international names running against each other
at the same
on the
time,
first leg and the second leg. Quite often these guys, if they're running in their club relays, which is a really popular format of the sport over in Scandinavia, they'll all be running on the last leg because that's the glory leg and these are the big stars. But you come to the World Champs and everyone's a big star, and these guys are sort of thrashing it out on first and second leg as well, and that's a really unusual situation for them. So
British team is quite experienced. Ralph Street maybe not so much, but Graham Runnings now has a gold from 2008, and he's been about, and given that he's based in Dunblane, knows Scottish Forest well.
Yes, so yeah, he was in that team in 2008. He ran the first leg there, which is quite a different challenge to what he's up on today. But yeah, he's definitely looking forward to trying to replicate that sort of performance.
And just as we look at Raphael running this testing, I'm guessing that he maybe has more of a view of the map before the race than the competitors do, so maybe runs a cleaner line.
I've not seen him checking his map too much there.
Daniel Hubman has der Horsach etol Shias Miskin Gravens Negaken. I guess
like South Africa on the first time through there, so that's a lapped runner there.
Well, he is number 2 right enough, but
I think that was Daniel coming to that checkpoint for the second time.
For the second time, yeah. Just an example of the crisscrossing and the different routings you could take. Just to say, this looks quite good for Britain at this stage, but there's a long way to go. But a top 3 position at this point into the second leg is pretty good.
Yes, and we're looking at the teams that are up there around them. You know, I can't see Belarus staying there for too long. Latvia have got their best runner on this leg, so you know, if we're with them at the end of this leg, we would fancy our chances.
Whereas you would be looking at Finland, Sweden, Denmark, to pick the obvious ones, to maybe climb up that board a little.
Yeah, I think so. And you know, the gaps behind us are pretty tight.
Murray, before I let you go, we may take you in again, but we did ask the other day about your own plans. You were talking about retiring. Is that still the plan at this stage?
That's a question I've been asked a lot since since Sunday. I'm definitely not going to run the individual sprint race again that I did this time. Whether I run the World Champs again, whether I look to coach some other athletes. I know my wife-to-be she's had a bad year with illness this year, but is looking to make a comeback, so I could put a lot of energy into sort of helping her get to the top.
Options are open, I think.
Definitely. Looks like we've got GG coming through here.
Again, France going one way, GB going the other way. You need to just keep focused on your own route and know what you're doing.
So it's good that he wasn't distracted there, and he's running on it by his own, and you know, that's what he does best.
Does he look good?
Yeah. I think he's clearly running well. I'm actually sharing an apartment with him at our team accommodation, and so he's been a little bit under the weather, but it doesn't look like it from the way he's running today.
Yeah, he did say that he'd been struggling with sickness over the last couple of days, but let's hope it stays off. Murray, thank you very much for joining us just now. We might have you back in later on, but thanks for joining us. Murray Stranischen, a club interlopers on the nation. Collachry Scott Fraser, a very here. Jaren gen hoge de vrete nu Graham Gristwood de mooi in Darnaway Jaren is in steegje aan doen Valahain Reers on Fourth Valley. I guess Estonia a chin Tranjalavision Laurie Silt de hoge guys en I guess fijn en nog kijk zit al Kokli fijn en nog kijk het al Jess de fijn kashin. I guess a holt in je koal rische loine achke heen. König war in Jellewisches hier Tatsch. Rank. I guess Brichting Asiyei. Bekend de gemichisch. Zijn vet Korea. Hij is in Richiot. Geen in a race geisen. Akaag. Een Darnaway jaren in a race. Scheintje nog maar ha. Holting Limpton. Lorna has joined me again. It's always important to notice that we're on live or replay. This is a replay, so we're sort of seeing a comparison of which courses people have taken at one point. Again, sort of, I get a little clump of runners still coming together there.
Yep. Little group just with Sweden, and I can't see what's underneath
the Sweden and the Irish and the Finns, I think.
So this is a further. I think they're further back in the course of the. Sweden's a bit behind.
I said, but Murray picked up, as you did earlier, on that little mistake the second Swedish runner had seemed to have made, Ollie Bostrom, just in the beginning, maybe going to the wrong control, doubling back and then carrying on again. And the thing is, everybody can make that mistake, and perhaps each team will make at least one of those mistakes at some point during this complicated course.
Yeah, but I think, the ones that win won't have made maybe quite such mistakes like that. I don't know whether he was with another runner that had a different variation that they were going to, and he just got pulled off, wasn't concentrating on his own map and which one he was going to.
And when you're trying to make up time, you'll be doing that even more, I imagine. You'd sort of maybe not thinking so much about your own route, just trying to get there quickly. Sean Yelevish maha. Daniel Hubman. Who are ball nor and nuri. Svanjay hier turus. Gan Yelevish. Shin fashke de uer hi just jach. Gan a rage a knifit in a shashin on the cully. Darnaway fashke farash on the ski de veriv. I guess it's low at Krinyachug. Lilianak at Bialu. Kashtal. Darnaway. Uur of Verrock. Quant the screen voor. Fehu at the low classic in train as an Darna tourist. Oh, the 10 year dog. Fagin is dog and the Fagin is dog. Miska the Hailchinakin, Kailchin Kuishis. Kailchin Shen. Duyakoch Masho. And Yelevish Peace Ma Roshach, I guess. If in Hong Kong, Chirochin. Shachatorn yet, Baviala shot, could create a heat Yaran Chirapwell. Cormas Fiat Manager Yeriger, and Nigan is low Yavan, the heat Yaran. Sean Darnaway, Maha. Lucas Passean, and Graham Gristwood. Graham Gristwood, which in a mach as the Craven, Serhain, I guess, bricht in your hood, Gam Darna Arch. And Darna Yaran generation. Minutje is Jirig, Hubman en Yelevish. Ach, ze wordt het kutter hier is Deen Bjarne Hound. Gaan jullie doen alles? Dat er heen is Frangoch, Lucas Passé. Als je niet zien, is ja genischt. I guess Shia Chicken Chia, Jirig en Christwood. Ach, ze 20 morgen, wat voor een woord ik Jirig hier. Jarenle, was Scott Fraser de Earth is mij Jennifer. Ach, als je het goed aan de siege gemaakt vaderach. Ken ik. Stoch nach bi kach jaran generation. Ik kach dinge de skippig menuviert. Bi kutje nachket schliep ik in satje. Na faginelle. Eigenlijk machine stoch kun ik trompe de slootje ach ik gaan hou. Maar druur ik holde dinge rui piatule menun aster ianu. Nirivi er 51 suas bekan. Bekans David actually genischt. Per Estonia in trainisch, verkene Braren Silt, Laurit Silt. In jaren ze Karl Godager Kasse van de Nirivi verder Horschacher. Chin Faschke Trimen at chin Gaun. In Yelevish geta agus Hubman came ma more Horschacher holtenje. Stokken arig in de chemie ach. Gillen Bjorn Puloch gemotion nach ha morkeljaar. Poploch ni shake. Jan Sedevi. Menschen in ist trieben net in de score. Erik, en gezolt in je train. Kemer het geem. Knapje Virginia ist. Die Fiona in de misk. Niet te van. Fiona in je van. Kari en je Belarus aan het kujok. Shit Belarus agin wat Bulgaria tjircher hosje gore. Dat is een knagbries zo. Fiona in Oster. Bulgaria, dat is Belarus, ulekolig. Tjumle 3 minuten, 3 minuten geleden. Erik, in Yelevish, dat is een schachter een nieuwe hietje. Is Jack generation. Lauren, to some extent, we're still seeing a little bit of clumping here. The Swiss seem to have a good lead at this point. Then we have Graham Gristwood for GB just after them. The French close to him, and then another group of teams just a little over well over a minute behind, and kind of coming up to 3 minutes behind, I suppose. And they appear to be still together, so maybe still running a similar pattern of legs and controls.
Yeah, so I think we're still getting the effect of the forking. Starting to play out.
And you won't really see the effect of that finish until the very last leg, because somebody may be running a much shorter, well, not a much shorter leg, but a relatively shorter leg on the third one.
I think after the third leg, the second time they pass through the fork section, then we'll have a really clear idea on them then.
And New Zealand is up. Haigats in a show, Australia show Kujok. I guess New Zealand to be Jimmy Cleaver and show up picking trip, but Seamus Morris in a show, Tim Robertson of Accord we gave Peter Gas and Tarik Gemach, the Gosta who's a region for a goal in Yamacher a Rouge Vienna. I think Lorna that just demonstrates the risks that are taken here. Just talking about Tim Robertson who had to pull out of today's race after injuring himself, I think, in yesterday's middle race. There are dangers involved in running as fast as you can through dense forest.
Yes, the trip hazards, running into branches. You can't tell if there's a hole underneath some grass or that's you can do some quite nasty injuries to yourself from the forest.
Fingers crossed Graham Griswood avoids them. Still that sort of minute and a half gap, and then the French just after him. The Norwegians are close too, but that's a pretty good position to be in at this stage.
That's really good, yeah. We've quite often seen with the pressure on the last leg, you can see some very big changes.
Ralph Street is on the last leg for GB in this rate. He's maybe a little younger than I think than the other two, but a pretty experienced athlete and runs a lot in Sweden at a very high level in relays, I think.
Yes, no, in Sweden they have some very big relay races. Jukkola a few weeks ago in Finland, something like 1,200 teams start, and Ralph was on the first leg and just ran away from them all on the start line.
More of the same, please.
Yes, please.
Nishin Tamer H. Ralph Street Maha. Shit the Heat Hoog, Nielevish, Brichting, Rank, Nidevi, I guess Latvia. And Miss Ille, a stay on the shin. Kushin pick at the end, get fagging. Yes, Rotul can get Bulloch ho art the shin. Nidevi Katach on the route. Nioch nog een geheim semi. Nidevi is a Gerewatch, and David is a keer Giag. Kies je verholt in de geld, Koran en Jarak. Zijn wachtse, ga je in de Estonia, zijn kata, gaan in de Jarak Orison, haar poploch ne sheikh kata, taai katrinji shun. Silt, I guess, Sidivi. I guess, Bahor, Kilfaginilika Mat Luru, Va, Rinyalamiri Honekshin. I guess, at Bialu, it's a Shaji contingent, and Ralph Street in Nochig. He is Jushal, Person Willamach. In press jaren, de jaren met jullie in een relay show. Relay in feit. Harry Raster, Miana, had de rears en pikkenis. Leheri hietje in de je. De race show. Aster moore hakker hier nu. En gesprichting naast. Assen daar naar Aach. Zit jongen in het treis. Ze boeien zijn. Haskelig bekend. Voor 3 minuten een keer minuten. Had de mag ik vieze chat. Zat je toe in de hoes show naast. Couture in de moor voor wel zien je FHU en gespeeld niet Janif niet wat kutjes maar sorry hij schachnig bokloch een jaar wat vijfens 3 jaar geen heeft van geljes van een bokloch als je maar is loodje je wat is Björn Moren haast nu een haast hier is zich herwaarts hapation routrische rotul shit hoopman geta is niet levish had je nu earth is maar Camel and Talavartishin. Shaka Valeke, Kamia and Hardok, Kafakasan, I guess a Fiachan Ministry. Show the garage, up, Galoving camera. And a lot. And the key shift. Can you laugh first?
Radek, our running cameraman.
Well, I hope poor Radek is okay. And the feet Ule Itchinamach Bickervik. Macha quarantine, Fehu. Icolina Torshachi. She Fetni Hilevish hier ter wisse van Abiut Matthijs Kibours. Hoop men de kwant skis, bekken hier die ze poonige poonor in jeges. Kallen zit, kelar in de lieke poonor in nu kutjok. Tavelen de tjek, harigit. Hoop men. Koik pijnjaar, ne achteri, ik varpisch in de krunik. Kallen zit, kelar in de lieke. Kapoonor ille. Ach peesje je vaak in de oorlogstandjen. Efferille. Matthijs Kibours Afehu. Urisen. Kier Pijnjaar Rikkersen. Gaman is Davo no, Kirtus na vi farpischen König sa kwa Paraguay. Kunnen they more is een echt hoefman. Chinchia Siliat. Shahatare statue ajin. Hier wij vier de nieuwe woordes vier. Ik is vaak al kuzenik Matthäus Kiburs. Als jij hier should team jaar afke should Graham Griswood haast as een Darnaway. Gaan je la fatta voor je. Lorna, we see Daniel Hoopman coming across the line here. Goal yesterday in the middle race. He's clearly on form, but how good is the man taking over, Matthäus Kiburs? Younger, but quite pretty good.
Yeah, but he's the current World Cup leader at the moment, so yeah.
Golden Mix really 2014 and in the sprint 2012, so he's moving up in distances slightly, but you'd feel pretty confident if you were a Swiss supporter at the moment.
I think that they're yeah, but as I say, on the last leg, with the pressure, we've seen a few interesting developments. Here comes Graham now, flying.
Straight inhill. The athlete behind him was of no danger to him. I think that's the female Hong Kong athlete still negotiating the women's coach, but Shawler Graham Gistwood. Na Gafak, Skarrokik, Lisselot Jantin. Kim je haast Eliat als je een Jieriger zo'n. Kammel er een heuvel. In de presence te kijken. Dat er daar eens. Er zo'n voersel Jantin. En mag dan het half een siskeltje zo. Schachtetornje voor de Virginia Narcia. Ralph Street, quick and easy. Shit the horny Ralph for some came a year breathing.
He's listening for the beep to make sure it registered.
Doing everything
SI
right,
units,
yeah, making
they
sure.
flash and they make a beep. But with the noise of the crowd, they're making really sure.
Shit Ralph Street maha. Just out. Johnny King Juk will a map picket. Skilla Shesivas and that
making sure he's at the right board.
Graham Gristwood, the chin hicket. Fine creatures in here that. Looting a mach. Skahura. Smarajna, Talik Chilishin, Ferner of a Scott Fraser, the Hiat Garanya, Graham Griswood, Talik Limaria, I guess I could, Rough Street Amach say, Bekan is Minajkilia, Yiri, Rinjelevish, Haniel Nashit, Utaratain, I guess the Frangi Kitab. Lucas Passe, Kahut, Anish no, got Frederick Tronchon, Richie Yirig, Ganarang, Fichit Utaratain. Agus brichting. Zerishin ferkene. Sheen nog eens te kriop met een giat jaar en niks nach. Nirvi agus Latvia fair kolach. Manje Tali wisse Tokal. Jo agus Rudolfs Zernes. Een dremierig. Ja Latvia. Jetzt in het maar. Dat is maar natuurlijk kom ik pullach hoort. Dat Hishin te met kaartje biat. Ik jurich guus kapulach. Eentje nog zin, Dali in Jirevach, Sheferke ma Kluchach, ma Hannes en Kujak. Dali le. Revesik is een 9 waardjes in de hul, maar heeft de Garpici ik een asterse. Tjechkoch, het in een hul. Oh, pak in het tuchtje misschien. Jan Sedivi, Wojtek Kral. De Tsjechië geveu, Wojtek Kral afeu, Skahokal. Agus Estonia, atjene Stjachenisch, Jerson, Chemikesen. 3 minutes call, Riri, Poploch Nishek. De Bjarn in de Fuskel er is bukken, en de Bjarn aan niet, dat het een Riri slacht via maar hier schuach. Berichting aan de Siergig ma. Estonia is een Sild go Sild, Lauri go Timo. Dat is een rie, die Jaran Mejerig. Gaan Reish Geisen. Sule de weg persoon hier terug. Ik kan het al. Ik kan het terug. Je weet allemaal gaan shit, terwijl shit in de wijn. Ja, het zit een nul. Hoeveel dingen aan de kavak vegen met Chick, nega Goshin geeft pijn. Elkaar hier spelen is gekollig naar nodig. John Huijn. Wally Postrom. Gaan er kuusje naar de golf. Gema Gassen. Kale waar ik naar gaat Jonas Leanderson. Or shit. Matthias keeper se fall off Gamor. Charoli Anderson College, Chaniloli Postrum College Evarach. Kihir Minachin Gillier. Doel an Voor, Gustav Bergman Shin. I guess der week kan er gaan doen bouw neen as a show in ist. I guess shit. Three gingen a shiri de point. Han jullie weer hoorsch als je berichting rank I guess nirvi. A fiachen bre erishin. Ach maar hier je ayat in een mooie read. Han hoe we se kwart de show. I guess kwart ik kan I guess een miljoenen line kujak. Sparsche show. Gejarave. Wel quarterly moren. I guess gaan natuurlijk wel jarave a fase in ist.
I think participation year on year is going up in terms of people trying orienteering. So pretty sure Orienteering is doing a great job in that respect, getting more people to try orienteering.
I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what orienteering actually is, and I think hopefully this will show people, you know, it's a high intensity sport, it's very physical, but then also hopefully through showing a bit of the other side of things, it's a family sport. I started with my family, we took a picnic round, you know, it's, you know, you can start all ages, all levels, and that's what people need to realise, and that's what gets the public in, I think.
I think encouraging people to do it in local parks and on the back of things like park running, which has become so popular, and the urban sprinting, I think will help people get into the sport. And it's a sort of sport that once you've done it and you're hooked, then you will develop more. So I know that several of our athletes have been working with schools and trying to introduce it to the PE curriculum and to help young kids get involved in navigating and work out exactly what it is that's, you know, so great about the sport.
That being said, you know, still to gain sort of recognition within most of the sporting community. But yeah, I think it's going.
Spórshaun ha fast, Spórsha fast, Chaun agus íontach at holtin sin va richting is Darna chick Darna Yaran. Rank Jirach Golar Hosho Picanach, Stocken Hariction at a cushion at all the earth, some Tolcherakil, and then you've had an Arne Yaran in a reach, a vision in you, the Vrichting Condrum and Rast. Graham Griswood joins me now. Graham, thank you very much. Coming hot foot to us here at BBC Alba's. Ralph Street goes through the next control. How did that go? Better than you expected, maybe, I think.
As well as I'd hoped. I wasn't feeling great yesterday. I felt I underperformed. I was feeling a bit flat, having had a bit of a tickly throat for a couple of days. But I went for a jog this morning and I felt like I wanted to fight today and give it everything. I didn't come all this way to sit on the bench, as it were. So yeah, Scott set it up perfectly, kind of just off the front, good group of runners around. I went out there, just focused on doing my own thing. I had a bit of company from France for a bit. I saw a few other guys around in the forest, but to be honest, I ran a lot of it on my own.
Yeah, Scott had commented he was running the first leg, everybody starts together, so it's always a bit busier. He found it really pretty confusing at times with runners everywhere, front, back, left, right, everywhere. Yeah, well, the course setter has set the courses in such a way that the different teams run slightly different variants, but at the end of the relay, every team will have run exactly the same. So quite often in the forest, even though there's 30 other teams around, within a few minutes, you can kind of not see anybody for quite a long time. And I would say that probably for the last 40 or 50% of the race, I was completely alone. You finished there just roughly about 20 seconds ahead of the French, and for them, Frédéric Tronchon has just managed to get past Ralph Street just slightly. But how do you feel it's coming together in terms of who is running longer, shorter legs? Any idea? Any feeling on that?
Well, I heard a rumour that Scott had a slightly longer one in the...
He thought so, yeah.
Yeah, but to be honest, until we sit down and look at it afterwards, it's almost impossible to say. The first control was definitely, there was two different possibilities, and I know that I had a slightly shorter one maybe, so it might be that Ralph has just had the longer one and the French guys had the shorter one, so it's just kind of come back together in that way.
That could be because Scott certainly felt that he had a long one at that point.
Yeah.
The splits seemed to bear that out the way.
It's also it can be like if you can see somebody in front, it's very easy to just close that gap. Whereas if you're running in the front, sometimes it's kind of hard to run away from people, especially people as good as Frederic Tranchant.
Do you think it made it a bit easier actually that you did manage to get a bit of space to yourself to just sort of focus on your own race? It looked as if maybe the Swedes at one point had maybe followed in somebody's footsteps and got the wrong control.
Well, that's of course the danger in relay, is that you kind of trust what other people are doing too much and don't focus on your own race. I've run a lot of relays now. This is, I think, my 7th WOC relay, and you get to the point where you find the balance and you work out when you should use the other guys. So you kind of use them without following them, if you know what I mean. So you make the most of them setting the pace, but you make sure you stay in control the whole time and keep full focus so that you don't do what the Swedish guy did and kind of run to the wrong control which somebody else is going to.
But you're feeling quite happy at this stage? Things are going well?
To be honest, if you'd said that we'd send out Ralph in 2nd place, fighting for top 6 is looking definitely on the cards, and medals, we've got a shot. That's all we could have given Ralph.
Graham, thank you very much. Kate Militine, thanks for joining us here.
Thank you very much, pleasure.
Graham Griswood is in Darnaway game gonna really vora show the skip of everything in you. I guess Gitara ha Tolikje. A full of fuse in the Premier Scott Fraser in the strike, a crushing more and the Baholich in the Lana Sap in the Ravacondrin. The Shay Rage Loa Ickerson, I guess Britain has on the sea of the Veliker Tuchimarash picking and Danaway cast the Tuchimarash Kujok, I guess no. Han je laat er morgen in de vision or son of yarn at the teen significant economic of all okay niet doen we get nog eens weer more in this art and she had the woning geweest de nuri I guess when you wish daarna ach maar een keer interesse ach maar de berichten niet met hebben de reisnippelen nuri geweest Chemical de skieren Venice en Veneto maar jetzt is een jaar gewaard maar zijn dat fijne toe is geen vriend Shia maar we krijgen elkaar Liction, Klema. Lorna Eads is back with Lorna. I hope Raphael's not still out running. He seems to have taken forever. But I think this was shot a bit earlier. But 7th place for the British men last year in Veneto. Graham was talking there that they're top 3 at the moment. Top 6 would be great. The medal would be wonderful. But I suppose any sort of it's always nice to beat your last year's.
It is, yeah. And you always want to move up a place, up at level.
And you were saying before that in orienteering, the top 6 is kind of first is what matters, but the top 6 counts. That's
we call it a podium position. Top 6 goes on the podium. But I'm not quite so sure for the relay sometimes because that involves quite a lot of people being on the podium. They sometimes just cut it to the 3, but
it's easier for us to understand as well as people pointing cameras and things. And we're seeing here again with Raphael, the terrain is difficult with. Particularly if you're just wanting to choose the most direct line that you can. What would your technique be? What was your favourite tactic in a forest relay? Was it to keep a steady footing or just go plough straight ahead?
You're looking ahead and choosing a really good line through the forest. It's different. So sometimes you're better to go up and along the top of a ridge. You can sometimes pick up little animal trods. They tend to follow the high ground so that they can look for predators chasing them. So you tend to get good lines along the top.
It's okay. And can I ask you, Lorna, just while you're with us, you've been involved in organising this year's event. There's a long time, there's 16 years since the World Championship got in Scotland last, 1999, I can't even count. But anyway, how has it changed? Is it a bigger event now? Is it more complex? Or?
It's much more complex. So 16 years ago, we only had the long distance. We had a short distance and a relay. So there was none of the sprint distances. You had qualification race within the week. They're finding it's quite a problem to host such a big programme now with all the sprint disciplines. So there's a meeting tomorrow at the IOF to discuss whether they split sprint and forest and do year-on-year alternating. So there was a change after I finished running. It used to only be every 2 years. They went to every year, but I think now that they're seriously looking at splitting the 2 disciplines.
Just having a look at that, there's exactly where Graham managed to get past Lucas Basset, the Frenchman out in the west end of the course. It does look like he was maybe on a slightly shorter leg at that point, but he wasn't sure between himself and Scott Fraser who had maybe had the longer legs and the shorter legs, but so close between the two of them all the way there.
Yeah.
And in terms of the interest, I suppose it's hard to say. You were an athlete back in '99. Now you're up to August. Do you think the public interest in the competition is greater this time than it was then?
Yeah, I think that they've been doing a lot of work trying to.
Well,
sorry. Together.
I'm still like twins, actually. Rob Street and Frederick Tronshaw, France, they look very, very similar. I'm never going to be able to tell which of them is coming across the line, I don't think. But yeah, do you think the public interest is greater this time round?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of work to try and interest the public in orienteering as a sport. I think it does help when the athletes are running well.
Well, you're certainly doing that just now. Brichting haast. Fair corner is rank Jik. Well, Hunnishu in Jik around that in Yish. Tronshaw again a rank a street the Brichting. Haast. Chin Fashkert Davinich in Shiriger Matthias Kiburs. A Hoshach. The Hushin. In Yelevishach. Shenirevach. Hanorschen en Ochgik. Manjetali. Fashkert Minach. Hanorschen er Yiri haast. Der street. Gedashin tra haast. Der tres Chema scho. In a race. A Brichting aan de Siachig maar had nog eens Polnijn. Kuchen Savach geschön.
So the last leg runner, Magnadali, he does have the class to pull up, back up to Ralph. We'll see.
Particularly depending on how this infamous now forking is.
Yeah, how this final play out.
We see there the number on the control that they have to touch, number 46. That's kind of as it's marked on these complicated maps we've got, not necessarily on how the athletes are marked. They tend to be marked 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, so on their map they are following 1, 2, 3, 4, but when they actually find the checkpoint, that number on the control, they have as a description on the map. So, for example, when they come to control 12, they know that it should have a 6-9 on it. That it's in a re-entrant and the top of re-entrant.
Yeah, so they get a little indication of where it should be, and most importantly, what number should be on it.
And that number has to tie in. If that number doesn't tie in,
you're wrong.
Then they're in the wrong place, and you'll get disqualified if you've not punched. And they do have to be done in order.
So als je een fask het uurhiet gelegt, zegt de race nem ver zo. Brichting als een daarne dressage kom liskal. Kierig chickerierig in de Frankich ha als een daarne hatch. Hier je noorsen de bjarne nille ha fuskelig als een jay. Noster. Adult Prunjala, Robert Merrill, Hashin, I guess fair as he in Bulgaria nog. Ivan Sidikov, een race geen generees geisen. Chin Fashker koik minute in Irik in Yelevish Draskata. I guess Trak ne Frank. Kiesjen maar had er een torstje het figgenaach. Wat je verfeinken. Svip noos niet te maken, zie ik het rashuis. En de pies trank als het kunnen wapen willen dullen. Er kunnen maken. Er zo'n ne farpishig gamal ray. En image just stemming in issue. Somebody who'll be much better at reading that track and reading the map that's in front of me is Joe Kat Taylor, who ran the third leg on the women's relay team. Second leg today. Second, I'm terribly sorry. I'm looking at numbers, first, second, third. Anyway, it was a very successful leg because it was a pretty successful race for the women's team.
Yeah, it was okay. I think Claire had a tough time on the first leg, so it gave me a position. I had a lot of teams just ahead of me when I started, and it gives you an extra kick in your legs when you know that you can chase people down.
And you've been running individually, personally, you've been running pretty well all week. Yeah.
I was really surprised at the middle distance, actually, how well it went. Middle's not usually my best distance, so it was great.
Fourth place yesterday?
Fifth. Yeah.
Close enough. Fifth doesn't really matter. So to come back to the Forest today, did it feel, you must have been quite confident coming into Forest ahead of today's relay after having done maybe better than you'd expected yesterday?
Yeah, of course. It's I think most I knew that I had a lot of speed in my legs, and once you do get on a roll. If you run well once, you can often carry it through day after day, even if your legs are a little bit tired. The kind of the positive feeling that you get can override that in a lot of cases.
And how did you find the course and just the terrain? It looks pretty tough in places.
It is tough. It's really varied. There's a lot of places where you can't see very far. That makes it difficult. And there's a lot of places where the ground's kind of messy. There's kind of dead forest on the ground, and it makes it difficult to run in a straight line, and that makes it tough both physically and technically if you try and hold a direction. So it was challenging. I made some mistakes, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one.
I'm sure. Well, we've seen a few mistakes already today. I've been told to ask about the scratches on your neck. Have you been tangling with the undergrowth?
I ran into a tree, which is quite normal for me. It happens quite often, but this is a particularly painful one. I actually had to stop a few seconds because it really hurt. But
Ralph Street appearing there and heading off along that nice high line there. When you do run into a tree, I suppose it's not really the tree's fault, but when you run into the tree, it must take just a few seconds to sort of stop, reorient yourself, just get yourself together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just that it hurts and it takes a few seconds to get your breath back, but you also have to get your concentration back. And I actually had another time on the course. I dropped my timing chip. I dropped on the floor in a really messy bit of forest. I had to stop, look for it, and then I got really quite flustered. Actually, I made a bit of a mistake after that, which was frustrating. But
well, no wonder, because if you've lost your timing chip, then you've lost.
Exactly. There's nothing you can do. You have to stop and just look for it till you find it. However long it takes.
We spoke to Holly Odd earlier, who had to pull out. Jess Tully finished the relay today. She could hardly be more local. I think she's just from just down the road.
Exactly,
so it must have been quite nice for her bring the race home so close to home in familiar conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Jess had a great run yesterday as well, and it's her debut in the international relay for us. But we thought, she'd be comfortable running the last leg, even though when you line up for the last leg and you see some of the people who you run against, you're up against a lot of
Maya Alm,
exactly. It can be intimidating, but we trusted that she'd do a good job, and she did. So
well done to all of you. Just before you go, it's just starting to rain, not too heavily, but slightly. Will that, having been out in the course today, will that change things at all?
I think, well, obviously these guys are used to running in whatever conditions. If you look at the ground, it can make everything a bit slippy. You see the wood rush, the grassy stuff there. When that gets slippery, it can be quite difficult. I found that yesterday. It started pouring down when I was out. I don't think it'll change anything too much, but as long as no one falls over and hurts themselves, then it could change things. But
let's hope not.
Fingers crossed for everyone that won't happen.
Captain, thank you. Captain Taylor, thank you very much. Kate Míle thank you. Son hyn y ddrin wyn, fe is y skipig breithyn o'ch y chriach ni ges y noch gydaach an y reis yn ban nes traiche yn yw. Agus yn tischke gyrach o tosioch y tuchtjum. Chon is jyn met hij is kuburs a haas der hosioch gar yn yelevish. Frederick Tranchant haas des yn Darnaway gan y reinkers nes mewn y hoch. Se glw reis y jod er. Fion of nog agus thuainach. Se Gustav Bergman ar chéimíige seo gan an thuain. Agus, well, cúsna ar gáil triálaite sin gaibh, astar mór achar I gáil sin. Lorna Eads ar school. Lorna, we talked about that long leg that takes you sort of from the north end to the south end of the course there, and I suppose that is somewhere that a lot of time could be made up or lost depending on the route you take compared to your opponents.
Yeah, the longer legs, they can quite often have quite a different time, whether you were going right through the middle or bearing right out to the left or right.
we're seeing a situation here quite similar to the women's race. The gaps weren't as big, but in the women's race, the Danes were ahead from first to last, and here the Swedes appear to have been opening up and continuing a gap. It's just a question is who's next? Is Tranchon who's next?
Got a gap now on Ralph.
But that's not necessarily the end of the world. We've still got a bit to go in this leg, and things could change.
Yeah. So at the end of this leg, all the worst of those gaffles will have played out. So from here to the end, there's just a couple of small switches in the gaffle, but it is pretty well a straight race from this point onwards.
So it comes down to foot speed and no mistakes.
No mistakes. Yep.
Okay, Commission Suler, Hísin Davy Arnahown and Dras, the Franco, some breathing off. I guess a Magna Dali and Breher. So they're very close now, the two of them. Hísin Davy Fash the Heart. Hísin Bjarnahown that in Yelevish, I guess a rank. A Magna Dali are all Hashach. It Ralph Street can Yirise. Fer Hoyolox a Rashik in his Iriki Mirika Dali. I guess ha Lua has skippled it. I guess ha skill. So hummus at her shachat Ralph Street Dali has the fee Bonoric Farpish in the Kunig, but Bonarakic is a really and Davil is a year Kervis. It's a free of Yeches and Hul. You can ask her sit Ralph Street. Is such a he is a station Sanish as a Hervachach. Quick chicken a vine, he should do who hecha. All of the Nikinerig has fluch. I guess toch a friend's of Kujok. Bjarn Vorant get that for a naher. Machine, doet de nog is. Get the Vitus and Resnung Hervach. Get a shin of gown. Oh, I'm just saying there that, okay, third and fourth is close, it's very tight. Somebody of Magna Dali's class ahead of you might be tricky to make it up, but fingers crossed at the moment. There's quite a big gap to whoever comes out of those woods in fifth.
Yeah.
You don't like tempting fate, do you, Lorna?
No. I think Mary reckon that on the run and Ralph might have the edge on Magna.
Okay, we shall see.
But Ralph's got to get back up close enough.
Yeah, Bishan Nochus got nothing. And she cooked chicken at Yirigava in Yiris. Estonia has a Nochke Kusashin, Timo Sild, and I gain you hatching a mach as a Khallishin. I shin you in Shachat the Wojtek Kralmaha, Mashe Ham, She Estonia Ham, She Timo Sild Ham. I guess a Fashket Kihin minutes and Erik Bjarn Moorishin, I guess Shin Kral, the football Nishake. Shin you say Yavach, I guess Hannah to Ganir is a Gavel. Well, han Yelevish at all the Vonach, but a jig Wotikan Kar, a Hanorschen, a rank, I guess Nirivi, I guess Brichting, a Shirik in Hord in a pine. Shomer a hat, Irvito. Speaking Yenikel, Yelevish has the Hoshach. You like Dolcholoor Shinach, should the Schlie had it go far villa at Menaimse. Who is many can such a tour. Get a rouge. Hanekilian a loin a footpierschen. He should bookloch. Garam as a vien for the Yemagel. Shachater stoche. Ach, I'm who I ye prehore. Gustav Bergman or Janu Gleva. Gustav Bergman, Janu Gleva, show a pre Rinyagineva. Piesmar Hoschacherik. Hoschach, he me yirige show. It's Kenny. Ha, Schiffer going, Schiffer Yiring in the race. A reef picking is such a hand to in Nille. A count huge, a shaken through, we can hold the nippy at the Nilnaster Yanuach. You to give it, Corona Suani, Ta, Yarang Fata, here, Ta Puris, Stokel at Nisloje. Stokel huge, Kuchok, a couple of night in Pecan. Heishin, quick minute, flew, Ushin. And doing, I guess, Bulgaria's car. Nog jamten prichten nog, zullen kun je riggen verhu? Wel, maar het daar hicht ik het kan klachten te verach man had.
Innovative.
Well, needs must. And we'll maybe seeing there, Lorna, we saw the Swedish athlete Gustav Bergman seem to make up quite a few places now compared to where they've been. There's still a bit of time, but he's making up places. They may have had two sort of longer legs due to the forking in the first two.
Yeah. So of the shorter one just pulling through.
And maybe the last people you want to be coming up at great pace in a shorter leg at the end is the Swedes.
Unfortunately, Murray's just tapped me on the shoulder saying we think Ralph might unfortunately have a slightly longer fork on the very last fork before they go into the common section. Which is maybe why Magnadal is caught up with Tranchant and.
Yeah, but they're all very close together. You know, there's not a lot of gap here. Ralph Street fair.
We'll have a three-way race for second and third.
Well, that's exactly what we've got. Na Frankich me ha. Dayikas and Jay, Nirevi, Pekanyikan and Jason, Brichtin.
There's no more forking from this point, so it is now a straight race.
Everyone runs together now, so it comes down to. You can't trust in that. No. They don't know that they just follow each other necessarily, but
they've still got four checkpoints to find, but they're all doing exactly the same.
So it just comes in pure route finding and foot speed. Whoever gets there fastest and most efficiently will win.
The running could be interesting.
In Yelevishir Hoshach Maha, Hayatsin, the Lavan Walker, shot, I guess Collis on it, Galat at the League, Paul Nor, Paul Arakich van Ganu skipping. Nuri, agus a Matthias Kibursch, Piesmar Hoshach, Horace Davin at Gilliar Hoshach, Rank, Ikihimi, a Bjarn Moore and Norsen at the Skipper Frankoch, the Nirevich the Brichtenich, Gokach, I guess shit, Munchen Hellevish, a Fehu, Gefurchinoch. Hayat and Mushnach al Kilor, Shiniskarakalat, or Golhuas the Liat, her son, Fehu the Harrijachke. Sean Jacob, Kral, a nog gigas a galje. Sin er gol gan gooi gewaat, ach Shaul. Minatjes, figet jik. Wat het eens de berichten niet. Hang her Hoshach, Govier Hoshach, she Giest, den hoort dus een gruwelijk niet had. Estonia Norsen, Silt, Geisen. Als een jij. Ik heb jaar nou, ik is aan de kuchen, kwart. Glema. De verrichting, de Nirevis gaan rank. Ach, zijn druppeltje naar Piech Tava onder Rakel Gijf. Matthias Kibusch, het alle wonen gaan het uit, maar het is Kalkjaar. En Nirevis. Hij is een Noorsen. Rank. Le Frederik Tranchant, Nirevi, le Magnetali. Hij is een Noorsen. Ralph Street, de verrichting. Zit een Huanjoch. Gustav Bergman. Urtus Mori en we zijn jaren zich in een race. Beesje je kames. Estonia's popelig naar Sheikh Sientach maar heel Ralph Street Roger Rater Hoshach. Het Bergman geta. Als geest veel met u hieschen te hachtes. Bulgaria vanaf een gelje. Year-old Savage Kenyerik. Lorna, there's a bit of a hush descending here at the finish as everybody just waits to see what happens. We all know, or it looks as if the Swiss will appear. The man they're supporting, Kibusch, will appear out of the woods first. But the question is, what order are the next three going to appear?
I think it looks like the gold is safe in the safe hat for Switzerland now. But I think we're facing quite an exciting finish for bronze and silver.
There's a few years since they won. They were second last year, but in 2009 since they...
Yeah, I was just trying to remember. I think they won it after there was an injury to one of the runners out on the course and several people stopped to help him and the Swiss won. But then the last time before that the Swiss won was back in 95.
So it's been a long time, and
so this will be quite special.
A good clean win as well for them, just beating the class of the field. Shomaha.
Because before that they were dominant for 3 years, 91, 93, 95, because it was only every 2 years then.
Well, Shaw Kibusch Maha, she's a liated.
He's not sure where to go.
I think his eye was caught by his colleagues, maybe looking for the Machshaw and Ish Chafisik. Gewille het alle woorden gaan je tinje vastget Matthias Kibusch. I guess 40 heen in Ocean. Gianniver Fabian Hertner. I guess Daniel Hopman. I guess Druder for the stadfuse. I guess Anna Legoal. I guess Rie Harris Urloine Kondag. Maar van Lorna Gra Ujevoor. Daar willen ze een eigen woondigheid met jullie. Ujevoor wanneer je een woondigheid aan de range wat kunt tripplatjes kunt mijl. Beter te gaan staat als de race met jullie was in de woning hebt dat gaat het al gelegen zo agus had Ariad. Keepers Jenna Keinchach, Giminichach, Galar Clarig, Gafink, Mirig, agus Keepers, Hoopman, agus Hertnet, Echin Harish at a line of Hoopman, Lepona Orson is Shiav Turis, Keepers, Erson Bono Orson Tristuris, Ach Fabian Hertnet, if ein Bono Orson Hiad Turis Riev, Ik Farpishin Nikrunig. As er is farstach at is a really show a Killy Darnaway, ha Bono Nimvet, begin you livish. Hertnet, Hoopman, agus Keepers. Fatter Hoshach at Kach. Ach she Hisht, Cool, and that again in Ochus, Neshoha, Nye Magnedali a Hound. Sheher in the Machas a Killian Hoshach, a Kolasher Hoshach, a Tronshog in a rank, agus Ralph Street, Gaprichting. Cool Nagin Hanochik. Had Kolach Richele, ach she Franco gehaald, she Tronshog Hound. Hanochik. Ach Katjevel Ralph Street. Velaan. Garage met Konuring Kus de gast de Lia ter Jalletje goal. Ach ik kan hier is. Hij had in de visachkes in Kimi Polnor. Dan navige. En nu kunnen we vatten. Ach zo Magnetali. Jolis, ag is een gomme zekersen. Je toch de jaren eigen zo. Gomasse ha. Verre halden. Oogplan richt. Gaat deur is in Polnor rie van de Farpishin de Krunige Valakshe, Bonarakje Bizike, Agis er Hollas aan de Frankig, de Wissenboon. Ralph Street, of Picken the Yeri. Yeah, but he looks a bit tired or pain there. Maybe he's just twisted something, because that's quite a big gap that's opened up now.
Yeah.
Ralph Street, Maha, Goalivia. Turn the Horg in the Halje, Agis Dali, the Dol Turn the Fine, Mayeri. And listen, man, pull off Doyle, the Visa. Lisje zo, en Gommering even wie. Kus is mi holletje menishin. Van de Gerwaach. Nuri as een jetalch. En Magnedali. Dit Nirivi, en Horsjachi. As een Darnaway. Zo. En is je Polnarakic, en Haagkissen. Karl Godager Kaas. Magnedali. In de lijn met Jerik. En John Frangich. Vincent Coupa, Lucas Passé, agus Frederick Tronchok en Horsjachi as een dressage. Agus ne Frankig. Het al geleeg Pauno ver maar hacher en Nuri. Pauno gan Frankig. Agus een dullig het is Ralph Street at Zwaiet en al Harischer loine. Wij zijn gierig het al Schachatore. Ach kielig gela. Jeven action maar shit erierigere. Ach gaan je shit dan. Nishar na Reinjak, Andreshva. Skip een drie, dat wil ze hoog gedrukt in Mirik. De volgende Giatsen, Agus Ralph Street. Gib Horsjachi. Als je Gerwaach, dus lo. Na 3 minuten jeriger in Jelevish. En dan is een jatalische zin. Ach, en je terug la, als je het ietsje. Dat dan de siege gokje nog. Als je jaren ik Graham Christwood wat zijn daarnaatje noorsen. Ach, Ralph Street. Er in Harischer loine. Is Gerwaach, agus. Zal de zin wie zet de krieg nog skippen verrichting. Gerwaach geisen, niet de wezen daarnaatje. Rank. Frankig hier weer rollo ga weer geen meer Jerik. Ach, en jullie wist rollo en holtenje. Shanduan je chin zeggen is. Je had zijn woning Nuri. Agus een golle zorre. Oh, Jacob. Merk hier. He's lucky there that he had just enough time to relax, double check and make sure Wojtek Kral, otherwise he'd have blown that. But 4th for Britain. Do you think they'll be happy enough with that, Lorna? Was that? You're always disappointed with 4th. You want 3rd.
4th is that nearly? No, they'll be really happy with that.
Maybe not right now, but you look back and think, yeah, we ran well. Yeah. But it just showed as well the class of Magnedali on that last leg. The funniest thing to make it, I don't think he's yet to win a World Cup, World Championship goal, but
he's always up there.
He's never far away.
No, he always has the potential for.
Best result since 2010, I think. There was 2008 was the last gold medal, but Britain will be happy. Kishin is Alma, Estonia, Shachat, as a Kievach, had every had Puloch and Poploch, Michel Ganyan, Garo, and Dalashin. Is een opperachtkes in. Action Huai. ar an marachtaí ar stéin ha brehorst. Gustav Bergman. Hulting je geworden tuurtje met zijn noschen naar zin. Jim Michel de Horner. Lithuania gaat piratoren. Samen zijn jachtje waar je wist hoe hij. Zit kleven. Tornesjarne wat doelstochen. Ik kun nou. Ach, gaan jullie jatsen in een doilische zin. Als je een volle schach. Gaat de hoort er u. Clearly, the Swedes are unhappy there, but Ralph Street has joined me. Ralph, how are you? Are you happy or not with that? Fourth place.
Yeah, I have to be happy. I mean, we knew we were going to run well, but we had no idea where that would put us in the end. And we thought, yeah, it's definitely possible to get a medal, or we could come, yeah, 8th.
The Muddy Street with his enormous purge of calculations standing behind you. He reckoned that you'd maybe were on a longer thought just towards the end there. It maybe just worked against you, particularly with someone like Magnadali with his pace picking you off.
Yeah, I mean they're all really good, and I was really, because I've been running with Frédéric Tranchon, the French runner, and yeah, I've been running quite hard, and then I made a slight miss, and then maybe had a bit longer. So yeah, but that's orienteering.
Were you okay over there? You looked as if you were maybe limping slightly as you came down into the arena.
Oh, I think I'm just a bit tired, really.
No wonder. Ralph, thanks very much for joining us just so quickly after finishing. Thanks very much. Fourth place, congratulations.
Thank
Ralph
you.
Streetishin, on the skip of the richting in you. I guess a hooer met a hiesje in Gerravach. Connery Graham Gristwood, I guess Scott Fraser, Richier Garain. Rank as a dressage, Miravis and Darnach, a Genyelevish, if ein Bonor, as a race show a Castel Darnaway. Trochla again Danavark, a little color upper Geisen, get a feet, a on the race in the band, Shiat and Danavark, a hooer, and Bonor is in Irish, Vater Hoshoch, it Miravis and Darnach, as in Huain, as in dressage, I guess skip of the richting, Claire Ward, Catherine Taylor, I guess Jess Tully, then a ski is a heen, as an ochgevach, as a racing, Mialaneach, Orison, Ulig, I guess Mialaneach in a farpishich, and Manochis, Gille, Hasho, Ulig, Erkorterev, Schliedroch, Nikrunik, show at BBC Alba. Shabal Koshe, Evisakin get a Maharis Division Corner of Sporsh, I get Hahard, Bishin Le Dunjay, and I Hartshinik, Jehuer and I Hahard. And now that east, like in the Sapin, Toppermar and I Dundee United, at the game Akimse, in your Chach in your show. And the ocean get that runnishin, Fisker Jasarn, Bio, Ear Horse did enough, Coop in a Kamanach, in your ure, and I love it, Bishin a Kihiru and Fisker, the Heat Ear Horse did enough, so now here, and I Chach in your station. Skip a cool watch, and I Palur and leave, Shin a Hoikala Chiak. Ik keer in Fiskers, befis ik in Koen Ocean vis a horse hier nog. I guess about Kosje, Bio, Darby more in your Chloe, Martin Nice St. Mirren. Ik hier het la harichet, gen a lonestel. Ik fiechet minach, koikbench en fiechet go ook. I guess Falkirk de Barton. Geen Bio, vis ik in hier nog la harichet, gen a lonestel. Shit the ball Kosje, ik show fast beschleetrach ne krinnig. I'm nog eens get the horterif. Ik show a Castle Darnaway on the Murif. I give 11.